On Route 44 in Canton, a headless figure in a flowing cape has been riding a horse with glowing eyes along the old Albany Turnpike since before Washington Irving wrote a word about Sleepy Hollow. A French military paymaster vanished from Hosford's Tavern in 1777, carrying gold for soldiers, stopping once, never arriving. On Whirlwind Hill Road in Wallingford, there is a reservoir that was created in 1943 by flooding the Muddy River Valley. Beneath the water is a colonial road that George Washington traveled in 1775 and again in 1789. The woman in white who appears barefoot at the shoulder of the road above, pale dress, standing still, gone before anyone reaches her. These are 30 haunted roads in Connecticut. Number 1. Downs Road. Downs Road in Hamden and Bethany, Connecticut, is a place that once connected two towns, but today much of it is a rough, gated trail through protected woods and watershed land. The gravel narrows, branches lean low, and after a few minutes, the modern world seems to fall behind you. The old stories say these woods were never empty. Some people connect the area to Pukwudgies, the small trickster spirits known in Algonquian folklore. Others talk about the Downs Road monster, a tall shape heard before it is seen. Those terrible screams may have a real source, though. Fisher cats make cries that can sound almost human when they echo through dark trees. Still, the road has more than campfire tales behind it. On New Year's Day in 1847, near Downs and Brooks Road, Charles Sanford attacked and killed Ichabod Umberfield and Enoch Sperry. That piece of history gives the place a heavier silence. Long before stories of UFOs, strange lights, and glowing figures, real fear had already passed through that bend. Some lights may be satellites. Some sounds may be animals. Some shadows may be nothing at all. But when the trail grows still and the woods close around the old road, every explanation feels a little smaller. The place does not need to prove every legend. It already feels haunted by memory and old loss, too. Number 2. Route 59. Route 59 in Easton, Connecticut, looks calm until it reaches Union Cemetery. The burial ground is more than 250 years old, with old stones standing close to the road and trees crowding the fence. In the daytime, it can feel historic and quiet. After dark, many drivers say the same stretch feels watched by something old. The most famous story is the White Lady. She is said to appear in a white nightgown and bonnet, sometimes stepping into the road just as headlights come around the bend. Some versions call her a grieving mother searching for a child. Others connect her to old local losses or a 1920s crime. The details change, but the image never really leaves. There is another figure in the same area, known simply as Red Eyes. People describe a dark shape in the trees, marked by two red points staring back from the roadside. The legend is often tied to Earl Kellogg, who died in an accidental fire across from the cemetery in 1935. It is hard to know where fact ends and fear begins there. Today, the cemetery is protected for good reason. Too many thrill seekers once damaged the grounds, so police enforce the sunset closing and trespassers can be arrested. That real warning makes the legend feel sharper. Number 3. Dark Entry Road. Dark Entry Road in Cornwall, Connecticut, leads toward the old settlement people later called Dudleytown. In the 1740s, it was not a cursed village, just a hard farming place on steep, rocky land. Families built homes, cleared fields, and tried to live from soil that was never friendly to them. The famous curse story came much later. It claimed the Dudley family carried doom from England because of noble blood and royal betrayal, giving the place its Village of the Damned name. That tale sounds made for a dark movie, but genealogists have shown the settlers were ordinary farmers. There was no royal curse following them across the Atlantic. The truth is sadder and more believable. The hilltop land was stony and acidic, so crops struggled year after year. As the Industrial Revolution opened work in mills and factories, and better farmland pulled families west, the little settlement emptied. Cellar holes and stone walls remained, while the forest slowly closed over them. Even the strange silence has a natural side. The mountains can trap cool, still air, creating a quiet that feels almost unnatural. Today, the area is private property, and trespassers face serious trouble. Maybe that distance keeps the legend alive. Dark Entry Road is haunting because the real story is not magic. It is failure, isolation, and a village that faded until only the woods remembered its name. Number 4. Snake Meadow Hill Road. Snake Meadow Hill Road in Sterling, Connecticut is famous for something that seems impossible the first time you see it. Drivers stop on a quiet part of the road, put the car in neutral, and watch it seem to roll uphill. That small moment turned the place into Gravity Hill, one of the state's best-known roadside dares. The legend says the push comes from Margaret Henry, an 18th century woman remembered in spooky stories as a witch. Visitors sometimes sprinkle baby powder on the trunk, hoping to find tiny handprints after the car moves. It is simple, strange, and easy to repeat, which is why the story has lasted so long. But the real Margaret Henry deserves a kinder memory. Historical accounts describe her as a generous foster mother in a nearby town, a woman who cared for poor children and struggling families, not as a wicked figure haunting a hill. Somewhere along the way, a helpful woman became a ghostly name, because folklore can bend a life until only the scary part remains. The science is clear. The road is an optical illusion. Trees, slopes, and the horizon make a slight downhill grade look like an uphill climb. The fingerprints are usually just oils from human hands made visible by powder. Number 5. Sawmill City Road. Sawmill City Road in Shelton, Connecticut, bends near Means Brook Reservoir, where colonial mill ruins still sit among trees and stone. In daylight, the old walls and water can seem peaceful, like leftovers from a working valley. At night, the road feels tighter, darker, and older. That is when its nickname, Dracula Drive, starts to make sense. The best-known legend here is the Melonheads. They are described as small, hidden people with large, rounded heads, watching from the woods and startling cars that slow down too much. Some versions say they escaped from a hospital. Others claim they came from a banished colonial family that disappeared into the forest and stayed in the Shelton Hills. The story says more about fear than monsters. After World War II, many families moved from busy cities into wooded Connecticut suburbs. Dark roads, old farms, and quiet rural neighbors felt strange to newcomers. Folklorists believe the Melonhead tales grew from those worries, then became stronger each time teenagers told them by flashlight. That is why Sawmill City Road works so well as a legend. It has sharp curves, deep woods, old stone ruins, and a reservoir that reflects almost no light after dark. Nothing has to jump from the trees for the story to feel real. The road already makes drivers slow down, look twice, and wonder what is standing just past the next bend. Number 6. Whirlwind Hill Road. Whirlwind Hill Road in Wallingford, Connecticut, does not look frightening at first. It is the kind of road where farms, old trees, and quiet houses make you lower your voice without knowing why. But the longer you drive, the more the place feels layered, because this land belonged to families long before the reservoir changed everything. The Hall family settled near here in the 1700s, and their Federal-style farmhouse became part of the road's old farming life. Then, in 1943, Wallingford flooded the Muddy River Valley to create the Mackenzie Reservoir. Water covered the Muddy River Schoolhouse and an old colonial road George Washington traveled in 1775 and 1789. Out of that lost valley came the woman in white. Drivers say she appears barefoot near the shoulder, wearing a pale dress and standing so still she almost looks like a signpost. Some call her a bride left behind. Others think she belongs to the schoolhouse or road now hidden under the water. Then the headlights blink and she is gone. Some witnesses also describe a white blur, almost like a snowy owl, sweeping close to the windshield at night. Maybe it is a bird, fog, or the mind filling in what the dark leaves empty. Still, Whirlwind Hill Road feels haunted because real places disappeared there. When the reservoir sits black beside the trees, it is easy to wonder what the water kept and what still rises when the old road falls quiet. Number 7. Jeremy Swamp Road. Jeremy Swamp Road in Southbury, Connecticut feels like a road people forgot on purpose. It is a dirt track now, tucked between trees and old stonework, but it was not always just a lonely shortcut. In earlier days, wagons, workers, and local families used this way when the countryside depended on mills, streams, and hard travel. One of the clearest pieces of that past is the Plaster House, a rare stone home built around 1750. It reminds you that this road once had life, labor, and neighbors close by. Then the world moved on. The woods grew thicker, and Jeremy Swamp Road became the kind of place where history starts to sound like a ghost story. The main legend here is the Melonheads. They are said to be small, hidden figures with large heads, watching from the forest and keeping away from ordinary people. Folklorists believe the stories grew after World War II, when city families moved into rural suburbs and the dark Connecticut woods suddenly felt strange, private, and a little unsafe. Another tale tells of a horse-drawn carriage moving slowly along the dirt path after sunset. No driver speaks. No wheels rattle the way they should. Maybe it is only branches shifting in the headlights, or memory wearing an old shape. Still, Jeremy Swamp Road feels old enough to hold both stories, and quiet enough to make a traveler listen twice before moving on, while the woods seem to lean closer in the dark. Number 8. Velvet Street. Velvet Street in Trumbull and Monroe, Connecticut, has a name that sounds almost gentle, but the road does not feel that way at night. Trees crowd the edges, the turns come quietly, and the old burial ground nearby gives the whole stretch a different mood. It is one of those places where even a parked car can look suspicious. Near the road is Gregory's Four Corners Burial Ground, established in 1761. There rests Hannah Hovey, better known in local legend as Hannah Cranna, the Wicked Witch of Monroe. In the 1800s, she was a widow who used her frightening reputation to get food and firewood from neighbors. Fear, in her case, may have been survival. Velvet Street is also tied to the Melonheads, small woodland figures with oversized heads said to haunt the back roads. The most repeated story comes from the 1980s. Teenagers parked a blue Ford Granada, went exploring, and then heard the car door slam. When the engine started, they saw it driving toward them with small figures inside and orange eyes shining. It sounds like the kind of tale told to scare friends, but the setting gives it power. A colonial cemetery, an old witch, thick woods, and a road nicknamed Dracula Drive all meet in one place. Maybe nothing waits behind the trees. Yet on Velvet Street, a normal engine noise can feel like a warning, and every bend seems to save one more secret for the dark past. Number 9. Route 44. Route 44, the old Albany Turnpike in Canton, Connecticut, feels like a road built for secrets. Long before cars, it carried stagecoaches, traders, soldiers, and tired travelers between Hartford and Albany. A tavern light on this route once meant food, rest, and safety. But one old story says safety did not come for everyone. The turnpike was chartered in the 1790s and completed in the 1820s, yet its most famous ghost story reaches back to 1777 during the Revolutionary War. A French military paymaster was said to be carrying gold west for soldiers when he stopped at Hosford's Tavern in Canton. After that night, he vanished. In those years, a missing traveler could become a road warning before the next coach arrived. Years later, when the tavern burned, people claimed a headless skeleton was found beneath the foundation. That detail gave the road its rider. For generations, travelers have described a headless figure in a flowing cape, galloping along the old route on a horse with glowing eyes, still trying to finish the journey stolen from him. The tale may be older than Washington Irving's famous Sleepy Hollow, which makes it feel even more rooted in the road. Maybe it began as a warning about lonely travel and money carried through the dark. But when headlights sweep across Route 44 at night, the old turnpike still feels ready for hoofbeats. Some stories do not chase you. They ride beside you. Number 10. Hell Hollow Road. Hell Hollow Road in Voluntown, Connecticut sounds like a place named by fear. The land was rough, wet, and full of stone. In the 1700s, families connected to veterans of the Narragansett War tried to farm here, and the soil fought them every season until the name Hell Hollow made sense. The spirit most people mention is Maud. Campfire stories sometimes turn her into a witch or a restless woman in the woods, but the records point to something much more human. Maud was a toddler who died in 1891. Her parents buried her where they could see the grave from their kitchen window, keeping their child close in the only way left to them. That truth makes the road sadder than the legend. A small grave became a ghost story because lonely places often change grief into something people can whisper about. There is another reported figure too, a colonial soldier with a musket, said to have been seen in the area as far back as 1742, walking as if still guarding the forest path. Hell Hollow Road does not need a wild curse to feel haunted. It has a hard name, old settlement history, and a child story at its center. At night, Pachug State Forest presses close around the road, and the dark feels heavy between the trees. If Maud is remembered there, it should be softly, not as a monster, but as a little name the woods never fully let go when the last porch light fades. Number 11. Route 111. Route 111 in Trumbull and Monroe, Connecticut, is the kind of road people use every day. Cars move past stores, houses, and side streets, but the old back roads nearby also carry a different feeling. Around here, ordinary traffic runs close to cemeteries, old family names, and stories that never quite stayed buried. One name tied to the area is Hannah Cranna, the so-called Wicked Witch of Monroe. She rests in Gregory Four Corners Burial Ground, a cemetery near this corridor. In the 1800s, Hannah was remembered as an eccentric widow who used her frightening reputation to keep neighbors nervous, and sometimes to make sure food or firewood arrived when she needed it. Route 111 also sits near stories of the White Lady, a pale figure in a nightgown, said to wander by Stepney and Union cemeteries. Some drivers claim she steps near the road as if she is crossing from one old grief into another. The route is also linked to Ed and Lorraine Warren, whose paranormal work helped make this part of Connecticut famous, far beyond the towns themselves. Then there are the Melonheads, said to hide along the darker connecting roads between Trumbull and Monroe. Folklorists see them as mid-1900s campfire tales born from fear of strange woods and changing suburbs. Still, Route 111 feels unusual because so many legends meet there at once. It is not one ghost story, but a crossroads of them, waiting past the headlights. Number 12. Ackley Road. Ackley Road in Colchester, Connecticut. It is only a short, plain, unpaved gravel path, about 1.9 miles long, with thick woods on both sides. In person, it looked like a peaceful New England back road, the kind of place where tires crunch slowly and the forest does most of the talking in the quiet. What makes Ackley Road strange is not an old murder or a famous ghost, but the internet. Colchester, Connecticut shares its name with Colchester, England, an ancient city with Roman walls, old battles, and centuries of haunted stories. Search engines often mix the two places together, and that mistake helped place European ghosts onto this quiet American road. Because of that digital mix-up, people looking for Ackley Road sometimes find tales of English Civil War soldiers, castle phantoms, and old-world hauntings that never belonged to this stretch of Connecticut. It is a modern kind of folklore where a search result can do what a campfire once did: take a normal place and wrap it in borrowed mystery. That may sound less frightening, but it is also fascinating. Ackley Road shows how legends can be born without a single headstone or ruined house nearby. A quiet gravel road, a shared town name, and a few confused searches were enough. Number 13. Keeney Road. Keeney Road in Glastonbury, Connecticut. The woods around it still hide pieces of early industry, the kind most drivers pass without noticing. Somewhere near the road are the remains of the Buckingham carding mill, with an old earthen dam and a hand-dug canal stretching through the trees. That mill history matters. Carding mills helped prepare wool and fibers in the days when small local industries powered New England towns. The canal, said to run about 400 feet, reminds you that people once shaped this forest by hand, moving water, building dams, and trusting the land to support their work. Today, the ruins sit quietly under leaves and brush. Like Ackley Road, Keeney Road has gathered some of its haunted reputation from confusion. The name Glastonbury leads search engines toward Glastonbury, England, with its King Arthur stories, fairy lore, and old spiritual legends. Others confuse it with Glastonbury Mountain in Vermont, another place full of strange folklore. The wrong stories drift in quietly and stick. But Keeney Road has its own kind of mood. It is not only borrowed legend. It is the feeling of old work left behind in the woods, of a canal dug by hands no one remembers, and a mill site slowly being covered by nature. When the trees grow still, the past feels close enough to mistake for a ghost, even if the haunting is really history returning in pieces. Number 14. Historic Roads of Gay City. The historic roads of Gay City in Hebron, Connecticut feel like they lead into a town that stepped away. Today they are trails inside Gay City State Park, but the paths follow the bones of an old settlement, once known as Factory Hollow. If you walk there, stone walls and cellar holes still break through the leaves. Factory Hollow began in 1796 and grew into a small mill village. It produced woolen cloth and high-quality paper, the kind of work that could make a remote old place feel busy and hopeful. Families lived there, wagons moved along the roads, and the sound of water-powered industry filled the valley. For a while, it must have felt like the future had found the woods. Then fire changed the story. A series of devastating mill fires weakened the village until people moved away, and by 1879, the settlement was abandoned. What remained were foundations, stones, and paths leading nowhere. Those empty pieces gave visitors plenty of room to imagine figures moving between trees where homes and workshops once stood. That is how the legends grew. A glowing skeleton, said to be a lost jewelry peddler, and the quick spirit of a blacksmith's apprentice rushing through the old roads. Maybe they are only campfire tales built on ruins. Still, Gay City feels different because the lost town was real. The ghosts may be doubtful, but the emptiness is not. It is still there, underfoot. Number 15, Tyler's Mill Road. Tyler's Mill Road in Wallingford, Connecticut, does not start with screams or shadows. It starts with a quiet preserve, about 900 acres of woods, old stone walls, and paths where nature has covered most of what people left behind. The place can look peaceful in daylight, but it has that still feeling old mill sites often carry. In the 1800s, this area was home to a working grist and apple cider mill. Families lived and worked around the water, using the land in the practical way New England towns once did. Later, in the late 1800s, the property was sold to a water company. To protect the watershed, homes were removed, and the settlement slowly slipped out of everyday life. That emptying gave Tyler's Mill Road its strange reputation. With houses gone and only stone walls, mill races, and traces of old work left behind, the area felt suspended between past and present. For years, the quiet road sat largely unmonitored, which made it easy for visitors to imagine that something still moved through the mist after dark. The legend says cars sometimes fail there at night. Headlights flicker, electronics act strange, and thick fog seems to appear from nowhere. Maybe it is moisture, rough roads, or nerves in a lonely preserve. But Tyler's Mill Road works on the mind because the history is already a disappearance. A working place became a silent one, and silence can sound like a warning after sunset too. Number 16, Lake Mohegan Roads. Lake Mohegan Roads in Fairfield, Connecticut, can feel friendly in the afternoon, with families walking trails and water shining through the trees. But the back roads around the lake change fast after dark. The woods get quiet, the turns feel tighter, and the place starts to sound like the kind of spot where old stories get passed around. The lake itself has a modern beginning. In the 1950s, the area was a commercial gravel quarry, not a peaceful park. By 1961, Fairfield had turned the basin into a freshwater lake, and over time the woods around it became a public place for hiking, swimming, and summer visits. That everyday history makes the darker tales feel even stranger. The legend here is the Melonheads. They are described as small, secretive figures with large, rounded heads, hiding in the forest near Lake Mohegan and the back roads. One popular 1980s story connects them to Velvet Street, where teenagers supposedly saw a ghostly blue Ford Granada driven by glowing-eyed figures. Like many local legends, it traveled from road to road. Today, Lake Mohegan is a safe and busy family destination with trails and a sprinkler park. Still, once the crowds leave and the lake turns black under the trees, the old tale becomes easier to understand. Maybe the Melonheads are only a suburban campfire story, but on the quiet roads nearby, every snap in the brush feels like something small stepping closer. Number 17, Lindley Street. Lindley Street in Bridgeport, Connecticut looks like a regular neighborhood street, and that is what makes the story feel so strange. In 1974, people were not gathering around an old cemetery or a ruined mansion. They were crowding outside one bungalow where the Gooden family said something impossible was happening inside. The case grew fast. Objects reportedly moved on their own. Furniture shifted, and the strange activity became too loud for neighbors to ignore. Soon the story pulled in police, firefighters, reporters, and hundreds of curious people. At one point, more than 2,000 onlookers filled the area, and police had to set up barricades to control the traffic. What made Lindley Street famous was the number of witnesses. Over 77 people, including emergency workers, reported seeing things they could not explain. The wildest claims included a 300-pound refrigerator floating and turning in the air, a 21-inch television lifting from its place, and even a family cat that seemed to speak. It sounded impossible, yet many insisted they saw it. Skeptics called it confusion, exaggeration, or a trick that grew too big. Believers called it one of America's most documented poltergeist cases. Either way, the strangest part is how ordinary the setting was. A plain street, a small house, and a crowd staring at windows, wondering if the next movement inside would prove the impossible or expose the truth. Number 18, Gardner Lake Roads. Gardner Lake Roads in Salem, Connecticut seem calm at first, especially when the water is flat and the shoreline is quiet. But this lake has one of those stories that almost sounds too odd to be invented. It is not about a monster in the woods or a ghost in a house. It is about music coming from under the water. The story begins in the winter of 1895. A local man named Thomas LeCount tried to move his 2-story summer house across the frozen lake using horses and sleds. It was a practical plan, meant to save money, but the house got stuck in a snowbank. Overnight, the lake's dam was partly opened, the ice broke, and the heavy house tilted into trouble. By morning, the move was a local lesson about ice, luck, and pride. When spring thaw came, the house sank to the bottom of Gardner Lake. Movers saved smaller items, but one thing was too heavy to rescue: the family piano. It went down with the house, becoming the center of the legend. Since then, fishermen and boaters have claimed that on calm summer evenings, faint piano notes drift up from beneath the water. Maybe the sound is water moving through old debris or wind passing across the lake in a strange way. Still, the phantom piano story lasts because the event behind it was real enough to picture. A house on ice, a bad decision, a piano left below. When the lake grows still, it is easy to imagine one final song rising through the dark water. Number 19, Amity Road. Amity Road in Bethany, Connecticut does not need much help feeling eerie. It runs near the old, abandoned stretch of Downs Road, where the pavement gives way to woods and the trees seem to close behind you. In daylight, it can look like any quiet country corridor, but at dusk, the place starts to feel older than the houses around it. The stories from this area often lead back to Downs Road. People speak of a large bipedal figure called the Downs Road Monster, something like a Bigfoot shape moving through the forest. Others mention a glowing white figure in a formal suit, seen wandering the path as if dressed for another time. These sightings give the road a strange mix of wild and ghostly. The roots may reach deeper than modern legend. Algonquian-speaking native communities in the region told stories of pukwudgies, small magical forest beings known for tricks and danger. Later generations added strange lights, odd sounds, and shadowy figures in a place where old trails, waterland, and thick woods meet. One story easily grows into another. Maybe Amity Road is only guilty of running beside a road with a famous reputation, but that is how folklore spreads. It follows intersections, trails, and rumors until the whole area feels marked. When drivers pass near the abandoned stretch after sunset, they may not see a monster at all. They may only feel the road asking them not to stop when night settles. Number 20. Route 8. Route 8, near the Farmington River in Connecticut, has a ghost story that begins with real water, real roads, and a village that was covered over. This part of the highway can feel normal from the driver's seat, but nearby lies a stranger history, a stretch of old road that disappears and returns depending on the reservoir. In 1969, dam construction flooded the historic village of Colebrook River. A 7-mile section of the original highway went under the new reservoir, along with old foundations, cracked pavement, and an iron bridge. During severe seasonal droughts, the water drops low enough for pieces of that lost route to appear again, like a road rising from memory. That setting feeds the classic vanishing hitchhiker tale. Drivers tell of picking up a quiet passenger along the dark bends, only for the person to disappear from the moving car before the ride is over. Sometimes the story is linked to the flooded valley, as if someone from the old road is still trying to find a way home through the modern one. The ghost road is not only a rumor. Parts of the old highway truly sank below the reservoir, and at times they really come back into view. So when mist hangs over Route 8 and the river woods turn black, the vanishing passenger feels less like a random ghost and more like the voice of a place that never fully stayed underwater in the dark. Number 21. Edmonds Road. Edmonds Road in Oxford, Connecticut, feels like one of those roads where people slow down without being told. Trees press close, houses thin out, and the dark seems to gather early under the branches. Locals know the nickname Dracula Drive, but the story here is not about vampires. It is about the woods watching back. The legend belongs to the Melonheads, small figures with oversized heads said to hide along the road and rush from the trees at passing cars. Some stories say they were escaped patients. Others say they were a family driven into the forest long ago. The details change, but the shape of the fear stays the same, something human, but not quite. The history behind the tale is more grounded. Folklorists connect these stories to the years after World War II, when families left busy cities for new suburbs surrounded by deep Connecticut woods. Those forests felt unknown to newcomers. A dark road, a sudden noise, and a nervous teenager were enough to turn ordinary shadows into a local warning. That is why Edmonds Road still works as a legend. It does not need proof of creatures in the brush. It only needs a narrow lane, headlights slipping between trunks, and the old fear of what might be living outside the circle of light. Maybe the melonheads were born from rumor, but rumors can feel very real when the road ahead bends into black trees and no porch light follows behind the final turns. Number 22, Pole Hill Road. Pole Hill Road in Bethany, Connecticut. It is not the kind of road that shouts for attention, but the woods, hills, and nearby abandoned stretches make people look twice. Around here, even a simple boundary line can feel like something more than a mark on a map. Long before modern roads, this north-south line separated two territories. In 1672, colonial surveyors used the same area to help define the boundary between New Haven and Milford. The story says, a land dispute was settled not by a battle, but by an all-day wrestling match beneath a huge chestnut tree. That history gives Pole Hill Road a strange weight. It was a place of borders, decisions, and old claims, where one side ended and another began. Nearby Downs Road adds the darker folklore, glowing figures, deep woods, and the famous Downs Road monster. Even in the 1600s, colonists believed some forests were guarded by spirits and should not be entered carelessly. Maybe that is why the road still feels like a threshold. On one side are homes, passing cars, and ordinary life. On the other are old woods tied to native trails, colonial survey lines, and stories that came later. Pole Hill Road is not haunted by one clear ghost. It is haunted by the feeling of crossing into ground that remembers who stood there first, and the old line between memory, home, and deepest woods. Number 23, Zion Hill Road. Zion Hill Road in Milford, Connecticut feels like a place where a small story could grow very fast. It is narrow, wooded, and close enough to water and back roads that dusk changes the whole mood. A kid riding a bike here in the dark would not need much imagination to hurry home. Like several roads in southern Connecticut, Zion Hill became linked to the Melonhead legend. The figures are usually described as small people with oversized heads, hiding near the trees and showing themselves only long enough to frighten someone. In many places, that story sounds like pure campfire folklore, but here the roots are more human. Local history points to the 1970s, when a young man with hydrocephalus lived with his family on the street. The medical condition can cause fluid to build in the brain, changing the shape of the head. Because the road had no streetlights, children sometimes saw him walking near the shoulder at dusk. Over time, fear and gossip changed a real neighbor into a legend. That makes Zion Hill Road one of the sadder stories on this list. The haunting may not be about a creature at all, but about how quickly people turn someone different into something frightening. Still, the road keeps the tale because the setting fits it too well. Dark trees, no lights, and a quiet lake nearby can make any memory feel larger than life when night arrives, and every ordinary shadow can turn into a warning. Number 24. Bald Mountain Road. Bald Mountain Road in Cornwall, Connecticut, has the kind of name that already sounds like a warning. The road is tied to the entrance of Dudleytown, the abandoned settlement often called the Village of the Damned. Before the story starts, the steep woods make the place feel closed off. The legend says a curse followed the Dudley family from England and brought misfortune to everyone who lived there. It also says the forest became strangely silent, as if nature itself pulled away from the settlement. But historians and genealogists have taken much of the curse apart. The people here were not doomed nobles. They were farmers trying to survive on difficult land. The real problem was the mountain soil. It was rocky, acidic, and poor for crops, so families slowly left for better chances elsewhere. The eerie silence had another explanation too. In the 1960s, the area was sprayed with DDT, which drove birds and insects away. One true tragedy did happen nearby. General Heman Swift's wife was killed by lightning on their porch in 1804. That is why Bald Mountain Road is more haunting when the facts are kept in place. The curse may be weak, but hardship, bad land, and sudden death are real. Today, the area is a private nature preserve, closed to the public, and trespassers can face serious trouble. Maybe that distance keeps the legend alive, letting the dark roads guard what history has already explained. Number 25. Marginal Road. Marginal Road in New Haven, Connecticut, is the kind of place that feels stuck between two worlds. One side belongs to the city, with traffic, buildings, and harbor light not far away. The other side leans toward marsh, weeds, dark water, and lonely edges, where sound carries differently after sunset. That in-between feeling is what gives the road its legend. People tell of a shadowy figure, sometimes said to stand 7 feet tall, appearing near the roadside. Others speak of odd mechanical scares, the sound of a tire blowing out when nothing has happened, or headlights seeming to disappear for a moment in the dark. The stories feel modern, almost made for drivers. But New Haven has always had room for strange sights near the water. In 1647, colonists claimed they saw a phantom ship shaped from clouds over the harbor after a violent thunderstorm. That old story came from a time when the sea was dangerous, messages were slow, and missing ships could haunt a town long before anyone knew the truth. Marginal Road feels like a newer version of that same fear. It shows how folklore survives even beside city lights. A shadow by the marsh, a strange sound under the tires, a blink in the headlights, and suddenly the road feels far from New Haven. Maybe nothing stands there at all. But where pavement meets dark water, the mind still expects something to rise from the black edge of the road after midnight. Number 26. Miles Standish Road. Miles Standish Road in Colchester, Connecticut, Feels like a place where the woods are listening under the tires. It runs through the Babcock Pond Wildlife Management Area, near the Salmon and Moodus rivers. Nothing about it needs to look dramatic. The uneasy part is the old sound people have heard in this region for centuries. Long before European settlement, the Pequot, Mohegan, and Narragansett people knew this area as Machimudus, meaning the place of bad noises. They connected the sudden underground rumbles to Hobomoko, a powerful spirit whose anger seemed to shake the earth. To early people living close to the land, those sounds were not small things. When colonists arrived, they made their own explanations. Some imagined hidden explosions under the ground. Others spoke of a giant pearl shifting in a secret cavern below the hills. The truth is stranger in its own way. Scientists now connect the Moodus noises to shallow micro-earthquakes along local fault lines. That makes Miles Standish Road different from many haunted roads. Its legend does not begin with a ghost in white or a monster in the brush. It begins with the ground itself groaning beneath old forest. When a low rumble rolls through the dark, the modern answer may be geology. Still, in those woods, science can sound almost like a warning from something older, waiting below the road, patient and unseen beneath the old dark road. Number 27. Roads of Roosevelt Forest. The roads of Roosevelt Forest in Stratford, Connecticut do not feel far from town, but they can feel far from help once the trees close in. It is the kind of place where a short walk can turn quiet fast. Families know it as a public forest, but local teenagers helped give the woods a second life as a legend. Roosevelt Forest was created in the 1930s during the Great Depression as a Works Progress Administration project. The goal was practical and hopeful: protect wildlife, give Stratford a green public space, and put people to work when the country badly needed work. That real history makes the later rumors feel even stranger among the trails. The famous story here is the Melonheads, said to be feral forest dwellers, hiding beyond the paths. The grounded seed may come from 1958, when a patient escaped from an asylum and hid in the forest before a ranger peacefully found him. In the late 1960s, teenagers mixed that event with old folklore to scare each other and protect their hangouts. Over time, the dare became the story. Kids challenged one another to spend the night in the woods, and the Melonheads became part of Stratford folklore. Today, the tale is even treated with a wink during community events and pumpkin walks. Still, when the trails grow dark and every branch sounds close, Roosevelt Forest reminds you how quickly a true incident can turn into a creature. Number 28. Clark Hill Road. Clark Hill Road in South Glastonbury, Connecticut, feels odd because the fear here is not ancient at all. It comes from concrete, rust, and Cold War silence. You can be driving through quiet woods, then remember that this area once held military buildings made for a world afraid of attack from the sky. In the 1950s, the United States built more than 300 Nike missile defense sites to protect cities and industrial centers. One of them, known as Site HA36/HA26, stood near Clark Hill Road and Del Reeves Road. The place had radar pads, barracks, and missile-related structures hidden among the hills and forest. When the site was decommissioned in the 1970s, the buildings were left to decay. Concrete cracked, metal rusted, and the Meshomassic State Forest began taking the place back. Locals gave the abandoned area a perfect nickname, Spooksville. Soon, rumors followed, including ghostly soldiers still patrolling the overgrown ruins. The real warning may be more earthly than ghostly. These rocky, abandoned places are also known as timber rattlesnake habitat, so fear here has teeth in more ways than one. Number 29. Hatfield Road. Hatfield Road near Downs Road in Hamden and Bethany, Connecticut, has that strange feeling of a place split in two. One moment there are homes and familiar turns, then the land drops toward abandoned dirt paths and deep trees, and the road starts to feel like it belongs less to drivers and more to whatever waits beyond the bank. This area has always been hard country to travel. Local history tells of a horse-drawn sleigh overturning on the steep winter hills, throwing school children into the snowbanks. That kind of danger was ordinary once, but ordinary fear can survive for a long time. Over generations, rough travel became part of the road's darker reputation. Later stories added stranger things. People spoke of a car-jumping presence, a horse-like creature, and a glowing, faceless figure in a white suit standing on the raised dirt edge. Nearby Downs Road already carried tales of monsters, spirits, and strange lights. So Hatfield Road became another doorway into the same haunted woods. One of the oddest traditions involved leaving a sealed full pack of cigarettes at a nearby graveyard as an offering for safe passage. The lore said the cigarettes would vanish by morning while the wrapper stayed sealed. Maybe it was a prank, maybe a ritual, maybe just fear looking for a rule. Either way, Hatfield Road feels like a threshold, and thresholds always make people nervous after dark. Number 30. Beaverbrook Road. Beaverbrook Road near East Hampton and Glastonbury, Connecticut, is a tricky story to tell honestly. The name appears in local haunted road lists, but the stronger trail of facts leads into the nearby Meshomassic State Forest, especially toward Del Reeves Road. That is where the woods carry the heavier history. Del Reeves Road is a deeply rutted dirt track running through the forest between Glastonbury and East Hampton. It is closely tied to the same Spooksville lore as Clark Hill Road, because the area once held radar control installations connected to an abandoned Nike missile site. In the Cold War years, this was not just empty forest. After the site was abandoned, the forest took back the concrete, the roads, and the old military edges. Locals began telling stories of strange feelings, ghostly soldiers, and ruins that seemed wrong among the trees. The road's sudden shift makes it even stranger. One moment rough woods and military remains, then expensive homes appear almost without warning. So if Beaverbrook Road has a haunting, it may be because it sits near a larger haunted landscape. The true center is the Glastonbury and East Hampton forest, where Cold War fear rotted into local legend. Out there, the past is not colonial or ancient. It is recent enough to touch, and that makes the silence around the old military roads feel even more uneasy.
If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button.
And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
See you in the next one.